Hi, I want to show you some of my favorite ways to deal with dates when I'm using Excel 2013 for BI from GP. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into connect to my data. So I'm under data, and I've already created a ODC from the data connection wizard to connecting to a view. And the view was the one that I got from Victoria Uden's website when she had created, and I made a few edits to it to kind of make sure it yielded the data that I wanted to see. And since that ODC is already existing, under data existing connections, I can find my view right here. Now when you're naming views, you do want to name them consistently. So I like to put the word view in front of them, and then that way I know these are views that we've created and not ones that came inherently out of the system. And Victoria uses that same naming convention in her, so at least there's two of us that think that's using the word view is a good way to go. So I'll go ahead and just click on that and bring it in as a GP table. And I'll enter in my SA password. So here's my data. Now one of the things with Victoria's views that's really nice is she has included a lot of valuable information, and then she's also made it where returns show up as a negative number, which is hugely beneficial. So if I scroll down here, this is a return, line number 27. If I scroll back, we can see indeed it is a return. So very helpful to you to start from her view. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite date fields so that this helps when we're doing some analysis of data. So I'll click on Insert first of all. First one I want to show you, you probably already know this one is called Today, and I'll go about this the more difficult way. On my menu I'll choose Formulas, and then on my ribbon I'll choose Date, and I'll select Today. So this is how you can get access to everything. Now it does warn us that this is a volatile formula, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'll explain that. Today's date is September 22nd. If I pull this report up to tomorrow, the column is going to be filled in with a different date. It'll be filled in with tomorrow's date. And that's exactly what I want it to be, so I'm okay with that. So that's how we can get today's date on here. Now why would we want today's date on here? Because if we want to have a number of days due to appear on this report, then that's why we would need to do today's date, so we have something to compare it to, the due date to today's date. So I'm going to create a column called Days Due. Now one of the new formulas in Excel 2013 is one called Days. And when you pull this up, it'll show you can enter in your parameters of the end date and the start date, and then it'll do the variance between these two dates for you. So here's my due date, and then it's just a comma, and then my start date, which is today's date. And now we can see the number of days that these documents are due in. So in this case, it's due May 4th, 2014. Today's September 22nd, 2013. So it's due in 224 days. And so it's an easy way to calculate it. And again, because it's a table, all the formulas will copy automatically, and as data is brought in, it'll continue to copy automatically. Okay, so a couple more that I like to add. I like to add in the week, because if I'm doing comparisons from week to week, then I like to have the week number appear. So we'll create one called week number. And this is a pretty simple one. When I start typing in the formula, you'll see, not a big surprise, which one we want, week number. Whoops, right there. Put in a plus instead of equals. Okay, so I have my week number, and then you can see I will need to select a serial return, and if I want to edit the type, then I can put that in, but I'm not going to edit this. So I'll just select my document date as my serial number, and then click OK. And so now I can see this back order, which is dated May 10th, was on the 19th week of the year. So that's a cool thing to see. And then my another formula I'm going to add would be weekday. So if I'm interested in what day of the week this particular document occurred on, so maybe I can see if there's some kind of consistencies of one day being having more sales than another day, for example, I'm going to do the formula called weekday. And the weekday formula, again, works very similar. I'll select the document date and then click OK. And you'll notice, as it did with the week number, it just yields me a number of the day of the week. if I wanted to actually show me the day of the week, the name, this could be achieved by formatting the cell. So I'm just going to format the whole column and highlight it, choose Format Cells. I will make it custom, and over General, I'll type in DDD, lowercase, for the day of the week, and then you'll notice it'll yield the day of the week for me. And so now this is something I could use in the pivot table itself. And the last one I want to show you is one that I like to do called Period. And this is one that I use a lot when somebody does not have GP or Excel 2013 because there's no timeline slicer on there or no timeline on there. And so you can use the slicer to deal with dates. And so I want something that will give them the ability to select the year and the month at the same time instead of having to pick them separately. So what I'm going to do here is create a text field, and I will highlight my text field and I will choose the document date, and then I'll put in a comma and I'm going to tell it how I want this date formatted. So in quotation marks, I will enter in 4 lowercase y's for the year, a dash, and 3 uppercase m's, and then end quotation. And what this is going to do, and of course my end parentheses, and what this is going to do is format it in with a year dash in the first 3 letters of the name. And this is great to use for slicer because then I could be very specific about which periods I want, and I don't have to deal with having 2 different slicers. I can do it all within one slicer if I choose. Although sometimes doing 2 slicers is not necessarily a bad thing. So now let's go ahead and insert this into a pivot table and begin our work. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag my customer name down into my rows because that may be something I like to do. And then what I'll do is go through and grab at the bottom extended price and put that in my values. Now in this pivot table field list, if I select from the drop down list value field settings and then format the number here, it will retain when I refresh. And this is important because then that way I won't have to keep going in here and formatting the pivot table. It'll retain my formatting for me. So that's something pretty valuable. Now back up to the top. You can see we could do a lot of really kind of cool things here. We can put in our week numbers. So we can now see the balance by each week number. Now of course this is spanning years, so you might want to then insert like a timeline here. And when you insert a timeline, it only shows you the fields that are date related. So I'm going to select document date, and we'll put that down here. And just for ease of seeing, let's unselect all of these and just select a couple that start with A. I think life will be a little bit easier. Stretch this out. And now you can see if I were to come in and select all of 2017, you could see exactly which of my weeks include that 2017. I could also come in and select weekdays, and then for each week I'll see which weekdays were included, or I could simply just take out weekdays altogether and cumulatively for the year see which weekdays maybe were cumulatively were included. Another thing that I do like to do, and I thought I would just throw this out here because I think this is pretty nifty, is I like to take my SOP number and my SOP type and put it in my row. So it reads column number, SOP type, SOP number. And then from here, let me just highlight this, go up to Analyze and Collapse. And go to Customer and Collapse. So now if I'm interested in, for example, why does this have a negative balance? What's going on here? I can open up Adam Park and see it was in the returns. And I can see the specific return number that was included. So that is another pretty nifty thing to do. So let's go back up. Let me just take out the weekday altogether here. And so now I have all of these transactions. Another way I can deal with dates, let me get rid of this timeline too. If I put the document date in my columns, now you know this was going to yield something very unyieldy and unattractive. what I could do is highlight the date right here in the row label, and then under Analyze, I can choose to group the field, and I could tell it how I wanted to group, either by month, by quarter, and so forth. So I'll select by month, and now you could see it's grouped by month. Now, likewise, I can do the same with my timeline. I can choose, when I'm here, to either group by month, like you're seeing now, which is a default, or if I choose from this drop-down list, I could tell it I want to group by quarters. So I could easily come in and do it like this, and now I can see quarters here and months there. Or, one thing that's pretty cool to do, let me come up here and ungroup this, so we're seeing all the dates. Good. And what we could do here then is group this by days, and we could see the total days here, so we could be very specific as to which day we're interested in seeing. And you can see this could become pretty unwieldy, right? Okay, finally, ta-da! You can see how unwieldy this could be. So what you may want to do is use this in combination. So we've got our timeline slicer here. We may opt to come in and include, create a formula for year and for month, and then let them work in combination with each other. Let's do that real fast here. So we'll come in and create, whoops, 2 columns. We'll create one for year and one for month, and then we'll come in and just do the year. You guys know this calculation for the document date, and then we'll come in and choose the month for the document date. Okay, great. And so now, meanwhile, back at the pivot table, we'll refresh the data, and we'll insert a slicer for the year and the month. And so now when we're looking at this and we come in here, we're going to be limited to what we can choose from, right? So you might want to then clean the slicer, the timeline out altogether. Okay, cool. So those are some different things we can do with the date. So we'll leave these slicers here for a moment. And let's insert a pivot chart. And I'm going to select a bar chart, a columnar chart. Let's click OK. We'll put this right here. And you could do some interesting things with the styles now. There's some really nice styling that you can do to really make the chart look and feel the way you want it to, including once you get it in looking like this, you could change some color segment so it matches whatever your color schemes happen to be. So that's pretty cool. This one might be a little bit hard to read, but some very cool things to do. And what's neat about it is if I go in and open up some things, so like let me unselect everybody and just select 2, then you could see some, it's very dynamic, it works with the system very well, and it'll open up as we open up. So I think that's a really cool thing to show, and I think it's something that's pretty nifty. And if you just click on these charts, you can copy the chart and then paste it in somewhere else into your into another kind of document. So let me pull up Word for real quick. Whoops. And it's just that easy. So it's really significantly easier to copy and paste a chart into any other kind of application that you have. Meanwhile, I hope this helps, and thanks for attending my Airlift session.